Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the Farm to Table Direct Show. I am Ryan. To my right is my brother Keith, and over here to the left is the other brother that you've heard so much about, our brother Scott. Scott, welcome in. Glad to have you in town with us.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, tonight is going to be a special night. As one, you get all three of us here, but we're digging into how biblical preparation builds strong communities. And this is all set up as a part of the New Beginnings Homestead Expo this Saturday, the 26th, Nowata, Oklahoma, at Trinity Church. That's going to be going on this Saturday from I believe it's 10 to 4. And they're going to have speakers, including our good friend, Dwayne Hall, our other friend, Bridget Nichols. And let's see, Stuart and Ashley Klaus are going to be there from Restoration Homestead. So anyway, this is all setting up for this, and it's opened up the door of a topic that's near and dear to our hearts about biblical preparation as well as physical preparation and how that works together. Now, folks, in the live chat, be with us there tonight throughout the show. We'll try to get you in, but also at the end tonight, we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. So if you have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll try to get to them. And if not, we'll try to wrap up in the end with a Q&A session. And guys, let's get this going. Bro.
All right. Well, of course, we're excited to have our other brother in the studio with us tonight, Scott. Scott's from North Carolina. He barely escaped. He got out of there just before the hurricane hit up there. But anyway, let's start off by talking about preparation. And a lot of people, I think, has that question about preparation. And is it biblical to prepare? Is it fear mongering to talk about, preparation? And should we even be using the word preparation?
I think from a perspective I would like to push out there is more of a provisionist and not a prepper, because prepper to the world seems like a very negative, it has a negative connotation to it. Where provisionist doesn't, prepper seems selfish, where provisionist has more of a community sense in the word. That's why I prefer the word provisionist here.
Right. And I think that we're going to, or that you're going to understand a little bit more as we go on in this talking about being a provisionist and thinking instead of terms of preparation, but in terms of being a provider or a provisionist. And with that, I kind of want to go back a couple of weeks ago whenever we were talking to Chris Reeves.
Okay.
And this is with New Beginnings. And we were asking the question, should the church be involved with homesteading and preparation and community? And I just want to talk just a little bit about that. And then I want to roll into the very next one,
Right.
which is then going to lead into the topic for tonight. Okay. And in with Chris Reeves,
Right.
just to kind of summarize it a little bit, we were talking about, should a church be involved in the local community and the term of preparation and that sort of thing. And I think the consensus was at the end of that time is, yeah, absolutely. Making it a kind of a center hub of the community to begin with.
Right. Especially, that was the thing with Chris was, starting with his own, just his own church membership, but then also reaching out into their community and bringing people in to engage with that. So, I think that's the idea that, and Chris, kind of echoed an idea that if they are involved and they're learning how to be self-sustaining and how to be able to work within that it actually helps the overall community grow. And it's not just, one individual looking out for themselves. It was everybody. So I think that was really a good point with him.
Right. And with that, before we go over to speaking about our last show, which was
Right.
with Bridget Nichols, I want to kind of dig into, some biblical references around preparation.
Okay.
And with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Scott to tell us a little bit about, we're going to talk about Joseph.
Yeah, we are. Ryan and I, before the show, we were talking. Of course, Keith and I, we've been talking for a couple of weeks
Right.
on some show prep stuff for this. And the thing that I like to focus on is Joseph in the storehouse and how we all know the plight of Joseph. He was sold into Pharaoh's land, into Egypt, to
Right.
Potiphar. He became the head of the house in Potiphar. Of course, he got thrown in jail for some accusations. And then he makes it over to Pharaoh, to the top of the kingdom, where Pharaoh actually gives him the ring to run the land. And that becomes important to know, because there's some preparation that's going to happen. And how Joseph got to the top is that he was able to interpret dreams that Pharaoh had. And those dreams were in preparation of what was to come. What was to come is the 7 years of plenty, as the Genesis 41 says. And then following that was the 7 years of famine. So in preparation for that, Joseph, not only being the interpreter, he becomes the leader of this whole interpretation for God. He takes 1/5 of everything that is grown in the crops in Egypt, which is 20%.
Right.
And he turns it over to the storehouses in Egypt for storage. Then once he's prepared the way, now this is happening all during the time of the 7 years of plenty. Once we get into the 7 years of famine, it becomes a major player, because the abundance that is used from the plenty now becomes the life source during famine. And he's not only able to feed Egypt, but he's able to feed the entire land. And that's when a lot of his brothers discover who he is at that point. But the main thing to point out here is that provision happened with the direction of the man of God. That provision's very key for us to understand what we'll be discussing later with the ministry of abundance.
Right.
It's not about the 20%. It's more about obedience. So
Right.
that's where we stand. And provision end times. I do hear a lot of people, not just the homestead community, but a lot of political avenues out there where people are speaking about, they feel like something is about to happen.
Right.
Something is coming this way. And so that started really resonating in me and getting me to start to look at providing, how are we going to do this? What do we do? Because right now, with some of the things that have been spoken about, some other countries have the ability to disrupt our food supply.
Right.
How do we as a community disrupt that and provide as a community? We can look at that as a famine, because if they come in, they're going to stop that type of food production and try to bankrupt this country by doing that. And the way to combat that is that we must become provisionist,
Right.
and look ahead and try to prepare for that.
And so I just want to go back and just kind of put an emphasis on what you were talking about there, about the storehouses in Egypt, that not only did it provide for the Egyptians in the time of famine, but it also provided, they become provisionists for people who were outside
of the community.
Right.
Yes.
And that's kind of the leading that we were having about the difference between preparation, as Scott, so eloquently put it, about it has a negative connotation to say prepper, because it's kind of got this selfish meaning.
Well, it makes people look crazy in the eyes of others when you talk about preppers. They didn't mean for it to sound that way, but
Right.
through some, that for every perfection, as I've said before, there is a perversion. There are those people out there that
Right.
will make something absolutely normal look absolutely crazy.
Right.
Well, it suits the narrative at the time,
It does. Right.
or it marginalizes a particular group of people. And me and you were talking kind of before show that it's almost counterintuitive
It is.
to a mindset, and particularly I'd even say American mindset, probably more than anything.
Yeah.
But and Scott and I were both in the military, and there's a certain mindset that you train with, or that you learn to deal with, and when you begin to view people as the enemy, and if they they're coming to get what you have, and you gotta, and I do believe you need to protect your family, but there was also things I've read where that there's people who have not prepared. They're going to come where they know preparation has been made, so you need to put back up for that.
Right.
and it lends to that provision, but it is so counterintuitive to what we generally just, as Americans, kind of, this is mine and stay away from it,
I believe this also, something that just came to mind was something you and I were discussing earlier about the New Deal back
Right.
in Roosevelt's day.
Right.
And the fact that what we were talking about, the facts is the church has allowed the government
Right.
to take in and take control of things that we should have had control and kept control of all along.
Right.
It seems like a great idea. And at the time to come out of the Depression, those things were good ideas. But when we talk about the will of God, we talk about provision. We also need to talk about there's the acceptable will of God. There is the good will of God. And then there's the perfect. This was just acceptable.
Right.
Because if the church was following in what was the absolute perfect will of God, we would not have rendered control to our government the way we have. And I'm not anti-government by no means,
Right.
in the normal sense. I just do not agree with what should be in the hands from healthcare to providing for communities to taking care of ourselves. I mean, everything that came about in this New Deal is everything that we should have been doing, but we allowed someone to come in and tell us how they wanted to do it, and we gained less control and they gained more control.
That goes back to something. I mean, just even what you were leading in there is something key that we've all talked about here recently, is the fact that, the church building, the church used to be the hub of the community. That used to be where everything happened. That's where they had meetings. That's where they had school. That's where they, whatever it was. And that was the center of the community, and it has become less and less so. And I've always, for a long time, felt that, the church, forfeited its responsibilities, for the sake of ease, or for the sake of taxes, or for the sake of whatever,
Yes.
That we become scared, ooh, big brother's going to take away this, or they're going to come shut us down for this, if we speak out, or if we try to take these roles back. But we just seen right there in your neighborhood, in your home,
Yes.
Right.
that it was the churches, and it was the local communities, and it was those private individuals that were doing the job.
It was. And I would like to, if I might add something in about the Franklin Graham Ministries,
Sure.
being kind of intimately knowledgeable of
Right.
some of the workings that go on within that ministry. I do know that they only accept so much government money, and I think it's less than 10%. And because that is, in their words, a way that they can stop the government from having any control into that ministry. And if we look at that ministry and what they provide today,
Right.
they're actually providing health care to people who don't have it around the world, Afghanistan to North America. They put up the hospitals in North Carolina, the shoe boxes, the food, all the things. And this isn't just that ministry. This is the people that are involved in sending the money to that ministry, and it can take care of all that. And if one ministry could do that, imagine what would happen if we all fell under the subjection of providing the way God wants us to, versus
exactly
leaning
right.
on the government.
Now,
So-
with that, Scott, I'm going to go over here to a commenter here.
Yeah.
And first of all, I want to welcome in Almost a Green Acre,
Yep.
Which
north.
is our brothers and sisters to the north.
Yep.
And
The 51st
and-
state.
and I'm just going to read that. It says, I'm in Canada, and the church has allowed the same to happen. I don't know if you're my brother or sister, or if you're both that's in there, but I'm going to say yes, we're very well aware of what's going on up there with Justin Trudeau. And I know that some of the things that's happening here has also happened there. As a matter of fact, they might have happened a lot faster in Canada than they have in America, actually. And we're trying to fight back, and they're doing everything they can to stop us from fighting back, right? So anyway, and then
See.
let me pull up one more thing that they said is another thing that has happened is there is cliques within the church. Okay. And if you're not part of that group, then you're somewhat seen as not part of their group. Should be a group of believers. And I'll just say amen to that.
Yeah.
And hey, you know what? I'm not sure what your name is. My name is Krista. Okay, Krista, from Brunswick. Krista, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. And I can tell you there's a way to make this happen, but it's going to have to happen internally. It's not something that happens externally, okay? But we're going to get into that. And thank you for your comment on that.
Well, let me add one thing to that.
Sure.
Just to realize, I want to put this in a global or more of a mind of corporate. The church is not a building. It is not a place.
Right.
It is not any of that. The church is a people.
Absolutely.
And we have to learn, especially when people are feeling separated out, we have to learn that it is something that we need to address, pull people in. But the church is, like I said, it's a people, and the kingdom of God resides in the heart of man, because as I told you earlier, Ryan,
Right.
you are the garden.
Absolutely.
You were where the headwaters come out of Eden and water the garden, from as you read in Genesis chapter 2 and 10. We are that garden. We are that temple. And a lot of times it should bring about that, you feel alone out there, but you're really not, because as it was said, where there are two or more in my name, there I am among you.
Right.
Which absolutely means where there are two, there are three. Christ is in the middle. So when you feel alone, you're still a part of the corporate church, but he's there with you.
Right. And it's, and that's such an imperative. I mean, I read this, I believe it was last night. I'm trying to lose track of my days of when I read things, but it was kind of this, and it was from the position of somebody who's on the stage in a church, and as somebody who's there frequently myself, it really kind of hit that we think that that's the ministry, when in reality, no. We're just the teachers. We're the preppers. We're the equipment
vessels.
manager.
Right.
That's all we are. And the ministry is the people out there.
Right.
They're the ones that are to go out and do all this.
Well, even in prepping, we got to remember that we're just the vessel. If
Right.
God sends you, he prepares you before he sends
Right.
you. So
Absolutely.
Right. And so I know that this is Chris Reeves chiming in over here, and I'm just going to put this up on the screen so we can
Hey, Chris,
all read
welcome
it.
in.
Yeah, welcome in, Chris. James 2:8-9. If you really fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You do well. Number 9, but if you show partiality, you commit sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. And I think what he's doing is answering
the
Chris
question
earlier.
You're almost agreeing here. Yes.
and
to
yeah,
Christus.
Steve, that's
Yeah.
well,
yes,
anything
that's right.
we talk about, or anybody out there that's having these type feelings or anything, when guys like Chris chime in, it brings about an agreement, because we should be seeing that in agreement with each other. If we're in
Right.
the spirit, there should be no contest. So I appreciate the input.
Yeah, I
Right.
do
And
too.
add
I really do. And I want to add something, and I'll always bring it back to Christ. I
Yeah.
always will. Christ is the same in me as he is in you.
Yeah.
And so how could he be any different?
Right.
I don't think Christ is a clique.
No, he's not a
No.
clique. I think clique is ego. It is one way that when we operate in the flesh, that we usurp kind of an authority over us, other people,
Right.
so that we diminish their capabilities or their calling in what could be greater in our life. When we start pushing people out like that, it becomes completely about the flesh and less about Christ.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I'm going to steer this in a little bit different direction, but we're going to be spinning back to you. It's all going to come together by the end of the video. So stick around to the end, because it's going to be worth it.
Absolutely.
But I want to go back and talk about our visit with Bridget Nichols.
Wow. Right.
Right.
That opened up a
And
whole can of conversation
possibility.
and possibility.
Actually,
Yes.
Right. And so with Bridget Nichols, now she has pharmacy, FARMACY pharmacy,
Barn to table.
barn to table market.
Correct, yeah,
All
barn
right.
to table
And
market,
so this is a farm hub. And this idea of the farm hub, I thought was amazing, because it was bringing back the local aspect of feeding each other. All right. And so now what we're talking about is the church being involved. When I say the church, I'm not talking about your building or somebody else's building down the street. I'm talking about the one new man. I'm talking about Christ in us, the corporate body here.
Right.
So the corporate body is very much should be having this spirit of abundance. All right.
Right.
And so now in the practical outworking of those things, you have things like Bridget Nichols is involved in, which is the Farm Hub.
Right.
Bro, do you want to kind of like tell us a little bit about how the Farm Hub works?
Well,
The
what
people
really
who are involved in it.
what it really boils down to is it actually is a community within a community.
Right.
She has a brick and mortar location, and she has arrangements, contracts, deals with producers of whether it's herbs, whether it's meats, vegetables, honey, all these people that's within a certain geographical region around her hub. And they bring their products that they make to her store, to the hub, and they go on a shelf. Now, Bridget happens to arrange hers more like a grocery store in that, like, all the honey will be together, all of the meat will be together. It's just got the different labels of whoever made it there. So
That's
very
right.
much like you would shop in a normal store. But it's all stuff that is made locally. It's made a lot of it, how should we say, ethically, a lot of non-GMO. It's healthy. But anyway, she allows that. And what that does, it brings into her community for people who don't want to go to the box store and or people who are very mindful about what they're putting into their body food-wise. It provides all of those things in one location. And the other cool thing is the producers, those farmers, don't have to spend their time trying to run a farm store, trying to take it to a farmer's market and set up and spend their day doing that. They just keep their stuff stocked on her shelves, and people can buy from there and order from them. And one of the things she brought out that was really neat was if somebody has a question about one of those products, be it an allergy, be it whatever it is, she's got a phone number she can pick up. They can talk to this person. And now she also does classes.
Right.
She does a lot of training, classes, how-to stuff. They're in her hub as well.
And guess what? They've got the ones who are the vendors
Right.
are generally the people that she has coming in
To
teaching
teach.
about
Right.
certain topics. So everything is kind of synergistic there
Yeah.
around the
You
farm.
know, and what she shared with us a little bit of a, I guess, kind of almost an intimate thing, that there's, the people that are her customers or that come to the hub have actually become more like family, and that, like, there's a lot of times
Right.
they'll come in to talk to her husband who works the store a lot, and just want to pray, just want to talk, just want to have that time. So it really has become a hub inside their little community there. So that's the Farm Hub to me in a nutshell. And I mean, it's like, to me, it's a perfect synergistic relationship between food and what we deal with homesteaders and preparing your own food and kind of knowing your food sources, and the church and what the church's actual mission is as well. To me, it's just such a great relationship there, because you are providing physical food and possibly spiritual food as well.
Right. Right. And so we also visited on this idea, and I'll go back and kind of repeat what Bridget said. I was thinking whenever we were asking her, how did you get into this? And she was talking about watching Little House on the Prairie, right? And how, was it Laura that would bring?
It was Mrs. Ingalls would bring her eggs.
Yeah. Right. Bring her eggs, and she would trade for something else that was in the store and things like that. And so it was on her heart. And honestly, I think it was, the Spirit of God maybe even speaking inside of her.
Well, she said she felt a calling.
She felt it as a calling. And I believe that's true. And I think I can speak clearly with Ryan and I and even Scott about, feeling things that are going on in the world, and between me and Ryan, we felt a calling, and
Absolutely.
And that's how the Farm to Table Direct Show got started. But this idea that we're bringing things back local, and one of the things that we talked about there was the church used to be the hub of the community.
Yes.
Right. It was the schoolhouse during the week. Right. It was the church. And if I'm not mistaken, it was also a place where they held town meetings.
A lot of times,
right.
yeah.
And so, we kind of see that it's possible that we're seeing a movement back to the church becoming a center hub of the community itself. Right. And so that was what is so, I think, enlightening to me, both about Bridget and Chris's interview that we did last couple of weeks, is that bringing together that entire idea in our mind. And we're about to go into even something else later. But what
Well, I
did
was
you
going to
want to
say,
say about that?
those who know me know I do movie references and stuff all the time. I just watch too many of them, but and it's kind of odd because it's like such not a Christian movie. But Pale Rider with Clint Eastwood. Right. There was a scene there where the bad guy had come back into town. The boss had come back into town, and he was asking for a report on what had happened. And they're like, oh, well, this and that. He said, well, what about these people up here? And he said, oh, they're good. They had a preacher come in, and the guy loses it. They had what? He brought a preacher. And the whole thing was, and his premise was that brings hope.
Right.
And if they've got hope, they'll dig in. If they've got hope, they'll fight. If they've got hope,
Right.
they'll quit. They won't quit. And I think that's so much of what the community hub and so much of what people like Bridget and Chris and the church as a body can bring that hope.
Right.
And people will unify and they'll come together versus being divided like some want us to be.
Right. Well, Christ is our hope of glory.
Absolutely.
As it states. And he's the reason that we do what we do and what we're called to. Like I said earlier, if he calls you to it, he will provide for you in it. So he'll give you the words to say. He'll give you the things to give.
Right.
He provides all of those. And we referenced earlier from Genesis, and I said something to Keith doing this. I just want to remind you with Joseph, what was going on is the realization of the word Jehovah Jireh, God, our provider. And he does. And that's why, to me, even the word provider or provisionist is much greater word versus the prepper, as we talked about. It provides a sense of community. It shows that the giving isn't just about one person. It shows that the gathering of the crops is not about just one person or one community. It's about a global community called the church. And if we go back, if I might, just for a moment, if we go back and we talk about Acts chapter 2 and what was going on in the entire book of Acts chapter, or the chapter of chapter 2, we see at the end that these people are coming in, they're laying their deeds, they're laying all of their possessions at the apostles' feet, and the apostles are divvying. It says, and they part it out to those who have need.
Right.
And I just feel like there's something missing in ministry today, because I think in a lot of ways, like in Acts chapter 5, we try to hold some back, as Ananias and Sapphira did. And the only thing we do when we do that is we choke out, we provide, instead of life to the community, we provide a death to our own ministry, because we choke it out. God isn't about a percentage. He's about abundance, and he's about giving. Right. And we had this question too, where we discussed, does God expect us to give everything? The answer, if we want to say it, is yes.
Yeah. Right.
But he gives you what you need when you need it.
Right.
And just as Joseph provided to the storehouses that God provided for them to store, that was everything, but it was for a time. Right. You may hold on to it for now, but when God says release it, let it go. Because if you do not possess your possessions, they will possess you.
And that's a very good point, Scott.
Right.
And with that point, I want to kind of slide into explaining abundant living and the attitude, and I would even say the spirit of abundance. I'll kind of give you something that I prepared for this, and it said, the abundance of Christ in us is like a wellspring of water that never runs dry. Just as well as a well keeps pouring out water to quench the thirst of many, Christ's presence in us overflows, giving us the strength, love, and wisdom to care for others and prepare for whatever challenges may come. The more we draw from this well, the more we can share it with those around us. Now, when we're speaking about abundance, we're not necessarily just speaking about physical possession.
Yeah, it's not monetary either.
And it may not even be monetary possession, but what he wants is all of you. He wants all of you to be in him, and he wants all of him to be in you.
Correct.
And so it would be kind of like every day when I get up and enjoy the Lord. So it's filling my wellspring, if you will. And I'm drinking of that wellspring, and that which is being flowed into me, I don't even think, folks, I have a choice except for to flow that which has flowed into me, to flow that part out. It's not even a choice. And we got a little illustration here. If I can get Dakota over here for just a minute.
Okay, we're going to come up and do something. Folks, listen, you want to pay close attention to this because it's rare that we do an actual illustration, but we're going to do it today.
All right. So we're going to focus in right here. And Scott, this is the illustration of what's happening inside of us as we drink of that wellspring, which is Christ himself. And if we're inefficient in anything, now notice what's happening. By the way, the glass, the source is that what did we call it earlier? The headwaters that are flowing out into us, into our being. And as it flows into us, and now of course the cup here is us. But guess what?
This cup is that garden. We are that garden. We are this cup.
Right. But what is this?
This is the overflow. This is the
overflow.
abundance that
Right.
is produced out of you in God's purpose for you. And it
Right.
doesn't matter. As I've said before, yes, money sounds great to a lot of people, but abundance isn't just about the money you have. Abundance is about the gifts you may possess or the wisdom you may have. And you mentioned earlier about Mrs. Ingalls brought the eggs. Well, that's the exact illustration of how the kingdom should operate, because the baker needs the mechanic.
Yeah.
The mechanic needs the builder, and the builder needs to eat. That's how the kingdom should be, and we should be providing in that sense. But if we continue to hold only expecting 10%, we're operating in an old covenant. God wants everything from us, and when he provides for us, it'll be enough, and it'll be enough to provide for others at that point. And you find yourself walking in his purpose for your life when you can open up and allow it. These ministries out there that preach prosperity, I'm not about that, because my prosperity is in my sons. My prosperity is in my family. My prosperity is inside of me because it's the hope of glory that exists there. But the product that is produced out of me from Christ is able to provide what I can do, what I'm called to bring it to that community. And I think we all need to be very corporate minded as a community, and we need to start evaluating and looking at this ministry a lot more serious, because we can make a huge impact. It's been too long before we believed that we could do this, and now is the time.
Scott, it's challenging conventional teaching. It's challenging conventional thinking right now. I mean, if we look at the churches across the United States, and probably even I'd say the world, maybe even the Christian churches, the challenge of that conventional thinking is, I come in, I give my 10% or whatever I've laid by, and I give that in the offering plate, and that's all I got to do.
That's what Ananias and Sapphira did.
Right.
So, and it produced a ministry of death in them. So if we want to carry that life into the world, we have to operate in a new covenant, which Jesus brought to us. And to be able to do that means there are some things that are going to have to change. And as in Jesus' day, not everybody's going to understand where you're coming from. They're not going to understand what you're seeing. But there are, as the church age has moved along to where it is today, there are things that men receive from God. And we have to be open to that. If we close our mind to what God's trying to do, then we'll never see his presence right in the middle of us. So.
And I think I've used this stat ever since I read it and heard it. And it actually came from Homesteaders of America and Amy Fuel and those people, was that 95% of homesteaders identify as Christian.
Yes.
Right. So what say y'all in this new challenging way of thinking and how that ties into the homestead community?
I see something too, other than just homestead.
Well,
I mean, I know we're talking about the community, but there are a lot of believers out there that won't step inside the walls of a building and worship anymore.
That's the truth.
We have to start collecting. And I know the scripture says, forsake not the assembling of ourselves together. And we have to realize that in those times, Paul wrote that because they were being persecuted and running.
Right.
But these people outside the walls, they still have 100% faith in God. They still believe in Christ and his redemptive work. They operate in their lives daily that way, but there's so much that the church has misunderstood with a lot of them, because they have these ideas, they have these callings, and they have been kind of in some ways rejected out of it. Or the other part of that community outside the walls of the what we call the church, that community they're running in hurt.
Right.
I don't want to get off on a tangent here for something else, but I believe we have to look at the church corporately and its existence and its power in this world if we'll just come back to the basic principles of what Jesus taught.
Well, you know, that's actually a good comment there, almost to Green Acres. That's a very I mean, that is a true statement. I can't always, go there. I was just, you're right. Actions versus words. You're right. It was illustrating to a point that, these two communities are so much aligned is where I was going. But you are correct that what people identify and how they live is two different worlds.
It is.
Get back kind of where we were at there, so much has changed, and we've got a lot of friends that traditional church, if you would, was never going to accept them.
Right.
And so, where's the problem? And the problem is we've become so set in our ways, right? Of tradition.
I want to bring something into that. And I see one of the biggest falling away, what they would call the falling away of the church. In the 80s and 90s, we had TV ministries that set up what they thought was called prosperity, and people hand over fist were sending in money.
Oh yeah.
The product of these ministries falling because they were not of the original purpose of God. Right. But these communities looked at everything in a financial sense.
Right.
These people got hurt, and we want to talk about, they need to be brought back into the fold at some point. But that also is God's way of showing those in buildings and in denominations that it's not about any of that. It's all about a global community of believers.
Right.
And what we can, and when we get everybody on board and we provide healing back to it, and I think we can do much. And like I say, the purpose of this is to try to today is to give some insight on how we are to be provisionist out here in the world.
Right.
One is don't fear, because as I said, if he prepares you, he'll also give you the ability and what you need to go forward.
Right.
The other thing is we need to see what's coming and come together to help combat against it in a very loving way, in a very Christ-like way. It's not about going out there holding signs, but we also need to learn what we're holding on to. And you may say, how are we going to provide for the community? We just have to think like Joseph did. We have to see how much excess or how much abundance that's left, and then we provide for that community. But we've got to pull everybody back into that community. And there is coming a day. There's coming a healing for all those people. There's coming a day where the church will absolutely reign again, but there has to be a course correction.
Right.
And I think that's where we're at. And that's why people feel this, especially in the homestead communities and in the farm to table and other communities that you guys deal with. I think everybody's feeling it. I think the whole church feels it at this point.
Right.
We have to recognize it. We have to come together, and we have to bring everybody back into the fold, because in Acts chapter 2, what happened after they provided and parted it out to other people? Thousands upon thousands of people came to the knowledge of Christ. And what did they do? The same exact thing. They took all their deeds and their titles and they left it at the feet. They didn't do what Ananias and Sapphira did.
Right.
They came in and did something totally different, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier too, Scott, and I want to, and it, for me, it speaks so deeply when we talk about this. What did Peter say?
And Acts chapter 3, you find where they were laying their possessions at the church's feet, and they were divvying out. But the thing that strikes me here is that by the time chapter 3 comes along, you see that Peter had no greed
Right.
in him. He told the guy at the beautiful gate at the temple, it was tradition for the lame and the sick to be at that gate and ask for money.
Right.
And what did Peter say? He says, silver and gold have I none, but what I have I give to you. And what did he give him? He healed him, and he gave him Jesus.
That's right.
So,
And I want to really put the exclamation point, because at the center of all of our conversation tonight, this is the primary message,
mhm.
is that it is Christ in us,
Yep.
working through us. And the more time we spend in our spirit with him,
Mhm.
in the Holy of Holies, the more he infuses his life and his nature in us. And that which is that flows into me is exactly what flows out of me. And so whenever Keith's out of the way, it's the expression of Christ that's seen. The unfortunate thing is, and I hear you, almost a Greenacre, a Christie, I believe, that I hear you about what a lot of them are doing. And whenever they fail to express Christ, it's a shortage of Christ in them. And it's a shortage of Christ in me when I fail to express.
Exactly.
Okay. And so, we're talking about the spirit of abundance, Krista. And out of everything that we're doing here, whatever the outcome of this is, and when I say this, I'm not talking about just this show. I'm talking about
The
the things
entire
that's going on and the entire movement of the homesteading and that sort of thing. It's not mine. Okay. I want to tell you, this is not my move here on this earth. It's not.
Nope.
This is God's move on earth. And God, I believe, is working in the homestead community in an amazing way right now. And there's a lot of people, and I thought we were alone, bro. I'm just telling
right.
you.
Well,
And
we
it was
always
just, this
Yeah.
last year has been so enlightening to us about what we found,
right.
and the things that keep showing up in front of us. There's so many things when we take account of the things that happened,
Oh,
even in the Farm to Table Direct show. And I said, I didn't have anything to do with that.
right.
That wasn't me.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't plan. I made plans, but my well-laid plans go to nothing pretty quick, as you probably know. But there are things that were put in our way that opened up simply because I believe that God might have said, "Hey, these guys, they're either not smart enough to know better, or they're just willing to do whatever." And so
Right.
I'm going to put a few things in their way, and that's kind of what happened.
Right. And
That's right, Krista. The Holy Spirit works on each differently, is what she
Right.
said there. And
Right.
so, yeah, that's absolutely true.
and it does. And, it's, and we can kind of, trust me, you're getting a little glimpse of some of the conversation we normally have amongst ourselves, and we'll dig off into these things and we'll have these conversations, and it's great. And we're glad to share. So let's pull back in. We're stepping away from the word prepping to provision and providing and,
Right.
and being providers.
Right.
How does that, I guess, what's the word? How are we able to help not just ourselves, but our community by doing that? How does that, because we've talked about, tithing versus provision,
Right.
and
Tithing versus abundance.
abundance.
And it's realizing what the abundance is. But one thing we have to realize from a little quote I gave earlier that I've said for years is learning what our possessions are and not allowing them to take control of us. When God says give, just give.
Right.
That's how you do it. And when he provides things for you, recognize it. If we do not, then those things take control of who we are. It also will cease any ministry within you that God may be pushing you into if we do not let those things go. Greed isn't the only thing. Greed is the spirit of it all, but
Right.
money isn't the only thing. There are
Right.
so many things. A guy may have 5 cars.
Right.
And if greed has a hold of him, he won't let go of that car.
Right.
And that's, Jesus even mentioned that, how money has, the love of money
It's
is
the root of all
the
kind
root
evil.
of all evil. And it in a lot of ways, that's what we deal with in this. We have to learn to let that go. And when God says go, go. And it's funny, in everything I've ever seen with God in big movements, it starts with one person.
Right.
And then it becomes such a there are other movements out there that are the perversion of that perfection.
Right.
But in most ways, when we've seen God move in our lives and in our generation, it's been great movements. It hasn't been something small. And the way those happen is through one person that just decides to lay it all down and follow him.
Right.
And that's
Pretty
how
much,
we do
yeah.
it as a community. We also want to do that not just as an inclusion to the community of believers.
Right.
But we want to do that freely. It goes back to, as well as me thinking about, how many times have we ran across that guy on the road holding the sign?
Right.
And God convicted me of this a few years back because I was the first one to scoff at that.
Right.
And he says to me, when I tell you to give, you don't question it. You just do it, because it's not up to you where that money goes. You give it freely, and it's up to him what he does with it.
Yeah, that's pretty
And that's
much
how
it.
we just have to leave it. We can't be hurt by what we expect others, because when you expect someone to do something, they don't do it, you get hurt.
Right.
Let me tell you about hindrance.
Mm.
So as we illustrated there with the flowing out of the water into the glass that flowed out into the community, into the world, that is our expression of Christ in the world, right? Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all of these things will be added unto you, But what I want to say is that sometimes when we hold back, that's a hindrance, right?
It is a hindrance.
And God is looking to gain all of us, all in us. And once he has gained all in us, then that removes each one of these hindrances. And there's a lot of things that become hindrances.
Right.
It can be my opinion,
Mhm.
my preference, which I have both of those.
Right.
And it can be the love of another individual on this earth that would become a hindrance to the outflowing or expression of Christ in this world. Or it may be holding on to material possessions, right? You said either you possess your materials or they'll possess you,
Yeah,
right?
possess
And
your
so
possessions.
possess your possessions. And so, this is a really key point in my life, and something that has richly, dwelled within my being, is this idea that there are hindrances and that I have ideas and preferences and opinions. And so the more we let go of a lot of that sort of thing, the more Christ has the way through us.
Yeah.
And so it's in us and through us that all of this works. But I want to, unless you want to say something about that, Scott.
We had this story that I told you earlier about the couple that came to my wife and I,
Mhm.
and they were told they were going to have a waterhead for a baby, and the medical team was urging them to abort. And I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with anything? It has to do with obedience. God told me to pray. God told my wife to pray, both of us. They came to us on multiple occasions, and we prayed. The result of that obedience and belief and faith in what he can do shocked me, because the day
Right.
they had that baby, it was perfectly normal. Imagine what would have happened if I had told God no.
Right.
And I failed more than I've ever succeeded. But my one true success in life is him.
Right.
It's through him. So
Yeah,
that's all I care about. And when it comes to even this community, this movement, I want to be a part of what he has for me. And I want to be a part of the corporate church and be a part of watching what he can do if we just all come together and we can all learn to be in one accord, as the scripture says. We were joking about that earlier.
Yeah. The
But
cars and Jesus.
what
time.
happens when we as believers absolutely put our money where our mouth is?
Oh, it's unstoppable.
Right.
And it's, and that's, we've talked a lot about, the spirit. Hey, Glory Hills. Glad to see y'all guys in there.
The Lacey's.
The Lacey's, yes,
Yeah.
that's it. They were former interviewees and new friends, but and love the name. I love the name of their homestead. But
Yeah. me too.
it's. I know that for me, and I kind of have to. I look at everything we all look at everything through the filter of ourselves,
Right.
but is, if I'm preparing or laying provision aside and I'm doing this, I'm not saving myself.
No, you're
I mean, I will, but I'm not, it's not about saving me.
right.
It's about saving my family. It's about saving my neighbors. It's about saving.
Community.
So we're expressing that love
Right.
by sacrificing, if you will, what we want
Right.
over what we're told to do and over what we should do and over what we need, and so I just think, I wonder, is that, how that helps us care for God's people. And as Keith and I have said, feed my sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for what's coming, we may be asking what's next. How do we do this? You know what? I don't know. I take it one step at a time too.
Sure.
And we have to just follow and seek. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall down. But, I can't answer for those to say, well,
Quickening of my spirit, and just the willingness is increasing. Christ is increasing in me, and I'm so thankful for it. And I'm seeing it, and I'm not really worthy of it, but I'm willing to go. Right, and that's what we all should be doing, just willing to go.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's.
Yeah.
With that being said, bro, I want to kind of go over here a little
Let's
bit.
get a couple of the comments.
Yeah,
in.
hit a
Yes.
little bit of the comments.
Welcome back, Teresa, first and foremost.
She lost us.
We know the
Don't be
internet
lost.
thing. Yeah,
Now you are a sheep that has been found.
there you go.
And so,
Glory Hills. Yeah.
yeah.
See,
Go ahead, bro.
well, the only thing we can take with us to heaven is the others we bring to Christ.
Man,
And, I mean, that's
that's a good
You
way
know,
to put it. Yeah.
well, what is the Bible say? Lay not your treasures up where moth and rust and thieves.
Right.
But lay your treasures in heaven where none of those things are. I mean, I'm paraphrasing that. Yes, I know I didn't quote it verbatim, but
about that, the word treasure has no
no, it's not
monetary.
money.
It's
No,
not
no,
money.
no.
My treasures are my sons. My
Right.
treasures are my brothers. My treasures are my family. My treasures are the things that God has given to me. And in return, I have to give those back.
Right. Well, I mean, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, and there we go. You go
Yeah.
ahead, bro.
And so the first step to fulfill your purpose that God has for you is to step out of the boat.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. I would say that the first step, though, not to correct you on that, is to be open to the Lord.
Yeah.
And then when you open to the Lord, it's just kind of a natural progression that you step out because you can't help it. It was the whole overflowing and things. So the more
Right.
that He flows into me, the more
Right.
He can flow through me. Right.
Right.
So yeah.
I love that reference. I mean, because it's
Yeah.
always my man Peter always cracks me up. I mean, everybody needs a Peter in their life because keep you
Yeah.
entertained. But but no, we forget. We always want to beat up on old Peter because he sank, but he got out of the boat and walked on water.
He did. He was
Yeah.
very good.
So he took that step of faith.
Right.
Right.
And as I know, David and Holly know, that first step of faith is sometimes the big step. But
I think something we skipped and just
Yeah.
by pure conversation
yeah, go ahead, man.
was
Talk to
when
me.
we were talking about the overflowing and the abundance.
Yeah.
From Genesis chapter 2, what really strikes me is when I tell you that if God calls you to it, He will provide,
Mm-hmm.
because the wording of how the river runs out of Eden into the garden,
Mm-hmm.
and then there is a progression from there.
Right.
It says it runs out to the 4
Rivers. Yeah.
rivers, which are the 4 directions, 4 different corners of the world. Just about these rivers provide a life-giving source
Amen. That's
all
right.
throughout the world. So when we fear, is God going to provide this? He already has.
Right. God and Jesus is the river of water of life.
He is.
Yeah, and it's
So, bro,
yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay,
If
you
you're ready
ask
for
me a
it,
question.
man. You're on the spot,
Uh-oh.
right?
Oh, quiz time. Here we go. I
Yeah.
wasn't paying attention in class.
Yeah, I hope you were. Oh, you were, I'm sure. So what does this have to do with what we've seen, the vision of what we've seen here at the Farm to Table Direct Show?
For you and I,
Yeah.
and for when we started this show, I mean, our biggest part of our drive was seeing what was going on in the world,
Right.
seeing what was happening, several years ago, and needing to be that voice and needing to say, I'm going to step out, and we're going to stand up and say something,
Yeah.
be counted in that. And it's taken faith because we've not had, we've got cheerleaders, yes, but I mean, we've had plenty of the naysayers too. And
Right.
why are y'all doing this? What is it? Why? And it's certainly some of the things we've put into it. But, as we've talked about, there's things that have aligned. And even recently, I mean, I'm talking like this
yes.
week,
Yeah.
things that
This
have
week.
aligned
Right.
that has shown us that, not only this is way bigger than anything we could come up with on our own,
Right.
but then as we begin to watch things, and I even say, the hurricanes and the things that are going on, the fires up in the north, up in Wyoming and those areas, you see these things going on in the world. And what you see is that you cannot depend upon anybody but God and his provision in that, because government's going to fail. All the things that we built to create all the safety fail.
How do we feel when we have no control?
Zero. When we realize that there's no control. And, so I think that as these things have come together, it really is highlighted for us, not only the two communities that are actually really one, but just how much, our faith community, how much the church is a body, as a corporate, the church, not the church on the corner, but the church, Christ Church, and the values that we are taught there, and even some that we've had to challenge maybe a little bit of thinking on because of tradition or the way we were raised or taught or whatever, and opinions expressed.
Right.
But that and the homestead community, and this movement that's back to, local, back to the community and back to this closer knit community in pushing back against that, and just how much they actually parallel each other. And, some people may not want to talk about this side of it or may not even see the spiritual side of it. But, I as I've said before, preparation is biblical. And I believe that in my heart that, that God gives us visions and signs, and he gives us warnings, and he gives us things, and he shows us the way to go. We just have to be willing to follow that.
Right. And that's what Joseph did. He
Right.
prepared.
Right.
He prepared for a time that was coming and a time that was plenty.
Right. Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong here ever, that, when God asks everything from you, he doesn't expect, and you'll see that he expects you to eat too.
Right.
Sure.
Well, and,
So-
and I tell people this all the time. It's like, since I recommitted my life to Christ, since I got back in that, it blows my mind, but I've never failed to have what I need. Don't always have what I want,
Right.
but I've never failed to have what I need. And there's been times that I've given what I didn't actually feel like I had and ended up with more than I actually should have had.
Right.
The provider, Jehovah Jireh, as you brought up earlier, God will provide, and he will provide that. So, but these things just, they coincide so much with each other. And we've seen, me and Keith over our conversations, this aligning of this stuff. And like I said, finding just how much they're harmonious. And when the idea of a farm hub and the idea of the church coming back to the center of that and being a part of that, it was just, Chris and Bridget, thanks for kind of, I guess, in a sense, being willing to step out and do that, Chris. I appreciate it, because it showed us that, you don't have to choose one over the other here. This is a hand-in-hand relationship. And this is actually, if we're following God's commands and if we're following his example, what he wants us to do, it's going to naturally flow into this anyway.
Well, I think and for anybody out there watching and listening, not just because I'm a brother, but the heart of these two, you guys. I love how Keith puts it. This isn't his.
No.
This has just been put in his care.
Right.
And at any day, God could give it to someone else and he'll be obedient.
And
I
I'm
think
okay
that's-
with that.
Yeah. And that's
And we-
exactly the heart of it. That I love what you guys are doing.
You know, that's something we've, I guess, all along, you know, done little reality checks from time to time, and always said, you know, if this ever becomes something more than what we felt like we were led to do, if it ever is taken away, okay,
Well,
you know,
you've
okay.
not allowed the possessions to take a hold of you.
Right.
You've
I'll
actually.
admit, now listen, it's a little hard
Yeah,
for
I
me
know,
because
but,
I love
yeah.
the camera, but no.
What I say here,
I'm
though,
joking.
and it's really, is you guys have made, if I'm not mistaken, quite a investment into this ministry that you guys are doing. And you know what that tells people, that your heart's in it. And I think you follow. There may be rewards out of it down the road, but those come from God. They don't come from man.
Right.
And I love the heart of the matter with you guys and how this is all about following and just being obedient, and also the way you guys build relationships with people. That's key. And as I told you earlier, sometimes you are the key that opens the door for other people to understand and walk through.
Right.
And that's how I see you guys with this. So you're a key.
Yeah, I'm just going to get up every day and be an open vessel.
Right.
And
That's
That's it. You know,
That's all I'm going to do. And listen, does he want you to give everything? Yeah, he wants you to give all of yourself to him.
Right.
you know,
Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all of these things
Will
will
be added.
be
unto
added unto you.
Right.
And it's just seek ye first. He wants all of you.
well, you know, I mean, I'll throw more on there. I mean, even Abraham, you know, willing to sacrifice Isaac.
Yeah.
Who did you love
It's
more?
everything. Right.
You know, this was the one thing in life that you wanted more than anything, and I'm asking for it back.
I just hope I can do that when I'm asked. You know?
Right.
And
I'm not even going to think.
Well,
Out of
but I mean,
anything, I'm
that's
hoping
hard.
it is hard because that's where we find what really matters or what controls us.
right.
Yeah.
You know,
So
But
we're
anyway.
heading up on,
Yeah.
we're a little over an hour.
yeah,
We're over an
we're
hour
just.
and 3,
I knew
so-
it was going to happen. Man. I mean,
Well,
we
it
can't-
always does.
I mean,
But
but-
listen, we need to kind of bring this full circle.
I will
Right.
say so, and
You
you
know.
know, certainly.
So what I want to do is just do a little recap here. We came into this, and of course our title here is How Biblical Preparation Builds Strong Communities. And I hope we've laid a case out for that. And not only that it does, but we have laid a case as to how that happens,
To go forward.
and that it's from the source, it's from the flow of life into us that flows out to other people. And that's where it all begins. If it wasn't for Christ flowing in, we could not flow these things out. And so the outworking of those things is probably what you see with most homesteaders. We feel like that they are the solution to the things that we see going on in the world. And I feel like, being that they are a large percentage of being the largest percentage of them are believers.
Right.
What I want to say is that we're increasingly, and those of you who pay attention, who paid attention in class, you know that we're in the crosshairs, all right?
Yeah.
The believers, all right? And so I feel like inside of me, when I look at the moves that's being made that's completely out of my hands, that we're preparing, not just for me, but that we are preparing a place for believers, and hopefully, the things that we get involved in and we participate with, I think that wherever God happens to send us, I think that it's not going to come back empty. That's what I think. And if God's in it, it won't come back empty. And like you said, if we lose it all tomorrow, it's okay. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to do the very best that I can. And I know Ryan, Scott,
Absolutely.
I know you guys are the same.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but what does this have to do with things that we've seen looking back until this particular point? We thought that we were alone, and then we met other like-minded people. And then once we met other like-minded people, we realized that they were seeing some of the same things that we were seeing. And I want to reflect back to Ozarks and Anacetta Scott
Right.
with In the Making,
Oh,
Farm
Farm
Girl in the
Girl
Making.
Yeah.
And what she, the things that she was saying, you guys need to be involved with HOA. Well, I didn't even, at that point, I
We
didn't even
hadn't
know what
heard of
that
it.
was. I study and I'm thinking, we're not alone.
No.
We see the same things. And so as we began to, work that out, the next thing we know, after the rendezvous and everything, that was an amazing success. After that, what comes up next? Chris Reeves. Actually, we knew about him prior to that, but we
Reached
were
out
able
to
to
us.
do that. And once we seen the heart of Chris Reeves and the fact that their church, Trinity, in Nowata, Oklahoma, is having the New Beginnings Homestead Expo, I'm thinking, well, okay, now we see this church that's coming together that they're actually having something to do with homesteading expos, which we just realized through Amy Fuel
Mhm.
and with Homesteaders of America, and then the book of
Homestead Tsunami.
the
with Joel
Homestead
Salatin.
Tsunami with Joel Salatin, and Ryan was reading that. He's been sharing a lot with that, and I'm thinking, man, we're on the same page.
Yep.
And you know what? I mean, we barely even met him.
Yeah.
Right.
Few
But-
minutes.
But here he is. He's on the exact same page as us. And I'm thinking, this is not a Keith thing. It's not a Ryan or a Scott thing. This is a God thing going on right now.
Absolutely.
So what was the most recent thing that we've just heard about?
Well, the most recent thing that we've just heard about, and actually Keith and I are very excited about, and that is the Rogue Food Conference in Dallas, Texas, being held at the Met Church in North Dallas. It is a 3-day event down there. Now, the only way you're getting all 3 days is if you go to the VIP package, because they're doing some stuff on Thursday. But it's Friday and Saturday. There are single and double day tickets available for that. Just look up the Rogue Food Conference, and it will take you to that page. That was created by Joel Salatin and John Moody. And it's about back what we beginning of what the Farm to Table Direct Show was, which was freedom through food independence, our food security, taking links out of the chain in our dependence upon the system for food and all that stuff. And that's their entire existence is about that.
Right.
And Joel Salatin's going to be there. I always get his first name, Moody.
John.
Man, oh, I can't remember John. Sorry, John, if you ever see this. But they're going to be there. They're doing these presentations. Saturday's the big day as far as a lot of presentations going on. They're focusing, and they focus on things like food church, how churches are involved in that stuff.
Right. Food church. Think about
and
it.
how you have food supplies, food stores outside of the normal system. And it is all about, honestly, it's all about taking back control of your food. And it's all about being counterculture, being against the grain, so to speak. And I've been reading up on it. You've been reading up on that since, and that was literally something that was shared to us from Ozarks Homesteading Expo from Cheryl Franklin. And so it's like, and I think we're planning on being there on the 9th, which is that Saturday, the 9th of November. It's 8th and 9th of November. And we're planning on making the trip down that day.
Right. So if you guys happen to have an opening and make it down to Dallas-Fort Worth, to the
Met Church.
The Met Church.
MET. Met
and
Church.
it's called
it's called Rogue Food Conference.
Rogue Food Conference.
Right.
If you guys happen to be down there, we're not going down there to take cameras and all that stuff.
No,
we're just going down there to see what's going on, check it out, kind of see some of the people that are down there.
Absolutely.
And try to learn. It's a learning event for Ryan and I.
Oh, absolutely.
And when they said food church, I'm like,
oh, we were in.
I'm like, God, are you saying something? And so anyway,
Teresa, we'll see you. We'll see you around. Tune back in. We'll be
thank
back
you,
next
Teresa.
week.
And so just to wrap it up, I want to say that if you've seen the progression of what we were just trying to talk about, the things that's going on, it's not ours. It's not in our hands. We just have things that are happening all the time. And the very next thing that we're going to be at
is the New Beginnings Homestead
at
Expo.
the New Beginnings Homestead Expo in
Trinity.
Nowata,
Yep.
Oklahoma at the Trinity Church.
This
and
Saturday,
so, right.
October 26th. So if you're in the Northeast Oklahoma area, or if you're in Oklahoma, Northwest Arkansas, and you can make the trip up to Nowata, one is 18 and under are free. If you just want to see the vendors and go shop, it's free. It's open to the public. It's $15 if you want to go into the speakers. I think they've got about a dozen speakers lined up. I've listed 3, which was Dwayne Hall with Red Feather Farms, Bridget Nichols with Pharmacy Barn to Table Market, and Stuart and Ashley Klaus from Restoration Farms. And there's some others. I can't remember them all. But if you go onto Facebook to New Beginnings Homestead Expo, you can find all that information out there as far as who all's going to be speaking and the times and all of that stuff. But it's a one-day expo, Saturday, October 26th. And I do believe
Chris and Amy is going to be there. Chris
oh,
and Amy Reeves. They're
okay, of
they're
course,
going to be
yes.
there, but not only are they going to be there, they are going to be having a topic there also.
Right.
And also what's her name? Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham,
Lindsey Graham,
Not
and
the
I
senator.
think she's,
an actual other person. Lindsey Graham.
and I can't remember which organization that she's from, but
She's
she's there
got a
to talk
homestead.
about regulations, food
Right.
regulations, I believe, or one of those things. I'm not
Yeah.
completely
Like I
sure
said, the
about
best
that,
thing to
but-
do is just go to New Beginnings Homestead
Right.
Expo on Facebook, search that out. And I think Mr. P is trying to pull that up for us and show us. But anyway, so go check that out. That's the next place that the Farm to Table Direct Show is going to be. And then we are going to be back here.
That's not the one.
That's
I'm
not
looking
it.
at what he's doing. That's
Anyway,
not the one.
Well, our producers behind the scenes back here, making funny things happen. But next week, next Tuesday, 7:00 right here, we have Allie Sheriff
For sure.
from Sheriff Family Homestead.
Hmm.
And she is, Kristen and Justin McConaughey will talk about food laws.
Thank
Okay.
you for that.
Appreciate it.
That was Chris saying
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
And
That's
but
who it
anyway,
was.
we're going to have Allie on. She's going to be talking about her new book that's out about sourdough.
Right.
That's her thing. And Allie is a veteran. She's of the Navy. She's a disabled vet. Very active within the veteran community, but also just a homestead mom. Just trying, and her and her husband, another Ryan. So me and him hit it off instantly. But anyway, they're just a great couple, and she just wants to share the things that she's learned and be a part of the community. And she's got this new book. We've met her. She's been a speaker already at some of the local expos, and it's going to be a great interview next week, 7:00 right here.
So let me go back over there, Dakota, and if you don't mind, drop the link to the New Beginnings Homestead Expo in the chat, so
Right.
anybody that
Yeah.
happens to show up, they can get that.
You
Yeah,
can
just,
get that in there.
there you go. Copy it and put it over there.
But yeah, so that's some of the stuff coming up. I mean, it is not slowing down like we thought it might.
Right. We've got other things that are up our sleeves too, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
We'll have to
We'll see
have
what
to keep those under wraps until we get a little more clearance to let that go. But
Right.
the Farm to Table Direct Show is going to be busy, and there's a lot of things coming up. Listen, I guess if he's able to get that in chat, that'll be great. We've kind of talked to everybody throughout the show that's been on the chats. I mean, we really,
Yeah.
If you got any last minute questions, now's the time
Yep,
to throw them in
be
there.
the time to throw them in there. But
yeah.
before we do that, I want to say, thank you to the panel here
Absolutely.
tonight,
Yeah.
and special thanks to my brother Scott
Yep.
for chiming in.
Right.
And yes, there are 3 of us.
Scary, we know.
Right. And the link is in chat over there.
And you haven't
for
met
the
our
New
sisters.
Beginnings
If you think
Homestead.
this is concerning, you haven't
Yeah.
met the sisters.
Yeah, that's not a show we'll probably do
No, no.
with all of us together.
I didn't
Yeah.
say that.
No.
I will.
Mr. P said the
We don't
back
have the
row,
beat
so-
button for that. No. Anyway,
Mr.
No.
P said the back row, so we do not need that.
good,
Yeah.
good sisters, but no.
Yeah.
Listen, it is, and so I guess time to wrap this thing up, and
I think so.
I think so. Well,
Thank
listen,
everybody in chat.
absolutely. First, thank you all for being in chat. I know Teresa's already checked out, and Glory Hills Homestead, and almost a Green Acre. I can relate to that. Almost.
And if you guys don't mind, of course, we have to ask for you to like and share, and
Hit the like.
helps us get the message out. And if you can, whichever platform you're watching on, leave a review. 5 stars, we hope.
Absolutely. Send some love. I will be shameless. I will ask. I'm not above it. I'm going to get crucified for it later. I'll get beat up. Listen, we are literally like just a few minor hours from crossing over a threshold on YouTube. And so, hey, put us on in the background while you're doing dishes or vacuuming or mowing the yard or whatever.
Yeah.
Just give us some love. That's all.
Just turn it on and go shopping.
And it's only because it helps the algorithms and it helps all that stuff. As much as we hate them, they're there. It is necessary. Well, listen, we're going to wrap this on up, bro. If you're ready, if y'all are ready. All right. Listen, tonight we talked about the fact that preparing is biblical. We've took the term and we're switching it from prepping and being a prepper to laying by out of abundance to provision, laying by in store for yourself, your neighbors, your community. And that using biblical preparation builds strong communities. It comes from living with an abundance of Christ in our hearts. We encourage you all to take any step towards preparing. The first step is any step. Just
They're over there, bro.
Hey, we're over here. I'm reading. I'm talking.
Yeah. So
We're interrupted up
sorry.
there. Anyway, every step towards preparation. Take any step you can. You start where you're at. If you're in an urban environment, it doesn't matter. Start where you're at. There's measures that you can take for yourself and for your families. And as you lay that by in store, it will be blessed and you will be a blessing to others. There's only one way we do this, that is together. Hence our hashtag Stronger Together. It does take a community. It does take the village, as they say. None of us can do this alone. And we do appreciate each and every person that is involved in this community and what they've been willing to step out and do, and the hearts of teachers that are within so many of them that allow that to be. So as we head out of the door this week and we go out there, be a blessing to somebody. Whether you're praying for them or whether you're actually physically doing some help for them, even if you're just smiling. Okay, just be a blessing to somebody in the world. And as we get ready to go in to an expo this weekend, I'm going to be out of pocket. I already had previous plans, but these two Gary's guys are going to make the trip north and go hang out with our good friends up there.
Yep.
So if you see them out and about, see the shirts, Farm to Table Direct Show, come up, say hi. Don't be scared. Don't be shy. And as we've already said, leave the likes, hit the share, the likes, and all that, subscribe, and all those great things. I think that's it.
That's it.
You can find us at the Farm to Table Direct Show on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and of course at Farm to Table Direct at protonmail.com if you just want to reach out to us over something there.
Right.
I think that is it. The link is in the chat to the New Beginnings Homestead Expo, so feel free to get down and get that. So are we going to wrap this out our usual way? I think so.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as we always say here, we do this to close out every show with prepare for the unexpected and keep it local. So feel free to join in with us as we do this.
Join us, Scott.
Join us in, Scott. You better join us. All right, here we go.
We're right up there.
Right up there.
Yeah.
Be a blessing. So as we always say here on the Farm to Table Direct Show, prepare for the unexpected and keep it local.